Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Want to share with you this project that I started about a year ago. Actually, when I saw that there was a Apple Xserve server online for under 150 bucks, and I thought, wow, what can I do with the server? I mean, it's Apple hardware. I knew that it had two 4-core processors, Xeon processors, so dual quad core, and started doing some research and discovered that the Xserve server is essentially a MacPro, but in a different case and with less ports, less expansion ports. And well, anyway, that's what got me interested, and I thought, hey, maybe this is something I could use. So what we want to talk about today is some of the use cases, why you might want to do this, why you might want to go, why I did this also. Look at some price comparisons, right? Does it make economic sense to do this? Look at some of the upgrades I had to add to the server to make it like a Mac Pro. Also, talk a little bit about power consumption. That might be a concern of yours. Well, right, this is a server. If I'm going to use it as a desktop, does it make sense for power consumption wise? Also, how do we overcome the end of life? Because this server has been discontinued by Apple. The whole server line, Xserve server line, has been discontinued, and this 2008 Xserve server has no support at all. The operating system is not supported on it at all. And let's talk about how to work with this, working either directly on the server or remotely using using screen sharing. Also, I'll mention some issues that you might want to keep in mind in case you want to do something like this yourself, and also open it up to questions and answers, Q&A. So here's some of the use cases, right? If you're looking for a low-cost Mac Pro, right? That's the bottom line. Mac Pros are expensive. They're beautiful machines. They're wonderful, and if that's what you need, right? But they're expensive, generally speaking. Maybe for video editing, video post-production, those kind of tools like Final Cut Pro, Final Cut Pro X. These are industry standard tools being used, or even some of the Adobe tools that run on OS X you might want to use, or just any other native OS X applications. Or perhaps you want to run actually the software called OS X Server, the server system, on true server hardware. Well, this is true server hardware, so maybe that's what you want to run on. Also, another idea I thought about is, hey, I know that VMware ESX supports Apple virtual machines, but only on Apple hardware as part of the licensing agreement. So would that be a use case? Turn this into a multi-tenant server, right? Maybe have multiple flavors of the operating system on it that you could share out, right? That was one idea, one reason why you might want to use this. Also, if you want real Apple hardware, you don't want to spend money on a Hackintosh. Certainly, you could do that on a lot of machines, not all of them, but maybe you save 50% off of a new Apple, but you still don't have Apple hardware. Okay, there's always the issue of it's not a real Apple device. So let's look at some price comparisons. This is kind of just rule of thumb, because obviously you can find prices higher and lower depends on where you look. This is what they're saying. If the server's in the middle, it's 1X, right? They're saying that when it was new, it was about $3,500. They say it's now between $600 and $800 for this 2008 Xserve server. On the right there, I've got a 2011 17-inch MacBook Pro, which I also have, but I bought that new, a year old, but new. 1,800 bucks with the memory upgrade. I'm into it for 2,000. But today you could probably get it for 1,800. Is that true? Maybe 1,500, right? And it's not much faster. It's about the same. This we're going with a dual quad core Xeon on the server versus a i7 with 4 cores, right? So they're almost about the same. Of course, you get a screen with a laptop and mobility and all that stuff. But you're looking at 3 to 4x for a used one today. Now on the left side, we've got a i7, another i7, but this is a 2014 iMac with an i7, so 4 cores. But you're looking at 5 to 6 times even on the used price, comparing used to used, right? So I actually got my Xserve server on eBay for $142.50. It came with 8 gigs of RAM and 3 80 gig hard drives, Apple certified hard drives. I couldn't believe it. Without really counting for shipping, let's just talk about without shipping, because it changes the thing. So that's what I started out with. Now, some of the upgrades that I made, some of these are optional. I upgraded the memory from 8 gigs to 32 gigs. that I was able to sell the 8 gigs for $100. So it cost me 100 net another extra $100. I needed a new video card. We'll talk about that a little later. There's a built-in video card. It's called the mezzanine board. It's using a proprietary PCI connector. And it works, but it's just not accelerated on the new versions of the operating system, which is what we want to run, because Apple discontinued support. So basically what it is they did not create 64-bit drivers for the old video card that's in there. So I needed a new video card. There's no audio on the server, but I got a USB audio device for about $8. So I got this PCI flash module. It's actually an MSATA flash module, flash card module. The card cost $32, and the flash module, the 256 gig flash module, I got for about $100 here in Poland. So altogether, I invested another $325, and the grand total is just under $500 with what I have into the machine. So this is the mezzanine card, just to give you an idea. It's a Radom X1300, so it's a rather old device. It has 64 megs of RAM on it. Like I said, in previous versions of the operating system, it's working fine. On the latest version, it still works, but it's not accelerated, so you're getting like 2 frames per second. It's just not practical for anything other than, I don't know, copying files, let's say, just as an interface. But if you're trying to use Final Cut Pro, it's just too sluggish. It just doesn't make sense. This is the video card that I upgraded to. I got it on eBay. It's flashed with an Apple ROM, and what that means is that when you're booting up, you're able to see the boot selection device. So if you want to change drives, you can see that. I mean, you could really use almost any supported graphics card. It's just that if you want to see the boot up screen, you got to have one that has the Apple firmware on it. So this one came from Hong Kong. Guys like specialize in probably taking off-the-shelf devices, flashing it with the Apple firmware, and now he's selling them. So this is working great. It's maybe not the fastest card, but it's fast enough. I don't know what people are talking about. Like, you can get this other card, it's faster. I'm like, it's fast. It's fast enough. Here's the MSATA boards that I played with. I actually bought 2 of them, but the one I'm talking about is the one on the right, the blue one. This is from OWC. I don't know if you know OWC, One World Computing. They specialize in Apple products and add-ons. They had this card here. It was a single MSATA slot for like $32. So I decided to get it. And it's working fine. Anything that they say that works for Apple, it's going to work. Working fine. But I also saw another card that I heard about could still work on the left there. This green card, it has four slots. So I actually got that. It was $69. It's not in this report. I'm using it for the thing right now. But it supports 4 MSATA cards, and it works also. So, you have your choice. The only thing is this green one, this long one, it only will fit in one of the 2 PCI slots because there's some cooling fins blocking it. So that's the one little restriction. Here's the other upgrades. They're kind of optional, but if you want to have a Mac Pro, you might need at least 2 of these. There's the USB sound card. It was $8. You only have 3 USB 2.0 ports on the server, so you might need more ports. If you're going to expand it, get a USB hub, but get one that's powered, because more than likely you're going to need more power for more devices. So definitely get one that's powered. Wi-Fi is optional because the server comes with 2 gigabit network ports, so it's just optional. But this one here, I bought in Poland at Auchan. It was like 60 zlotys, something like 60 zlotys. But it's the only one that I know reliably works with Macintosh. It works with my Hackintosh also, which I built prior to this. So those are the upgrades, basically, hardware. Now, what about power consumption? You might be thinking, man, this thing has dual 750-watt power supplies. It's got to use a lot of power. And it doesn't. Actually, it doesn't. Check this out. Here's just the other day, I was running Final Cut Pro, doing one of my videos, and it's my home power. It's 237 volts. I don't know why. I thought it was 220 here. But anyways, I'm getting 237 volts, and the server's pulling 1.20 basically amps. And you can see here the total wattage used. It was sort of steady state around 302 watts of power. And after an hour and 9 minutes, it used just under 1/3 of a kilowatt hour, which makes sense, right? If this 300 watts, take 3 hours, a little more than 3 hours to burn a kilowatt hour. So in a little over an hour, I'm just under a third of a kilowatt hour. Makes sense. So 300 watts, that's what your desktop would probably use, right? You probably have a 500, 600 watt power supply in your desktop, a higher end desktop server or higher end desktop device. And actually, it confirms my suspicion that it's actually not using that much power. And this is running with the single M-SATA flash and 2 hard drives, because I have 3 slots. I can have up to three hard drives. So I had 2 hard drives in there, just to kind of let you know it wasn't scaled down. It had the sound card plugged in. It had 2 monitors, running 2 monitors, had the video card. So all the stuff that I described earlier, it had all that. And so power consumption is pretty reasonable. So now let's talk about overcoming the end of life. The server's not supported, it's end of life. It's basically quote unquote worthless, right, to most people. So that's why you can get such great deals on these on eBay, at least in the US. There's hundreds of them for sale. Honestly, you can if you want to look, I can find them for you. And how do we get the new operating systems that are not supported? So basically anything after 10.6, which I think is Snow Leopard, it will not install directly. You have to do some tricks, but it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. To install it, Yosemite, because this is where I started, 10.10 Yosemite, we're now up to El Capitan, which is 10.11. So, but to install 10.10, basically, you've got 3 options. One of them is take out one of your drives, put it into a USB case, right? Plug it into an existing Mac or even a Hackintosh, something that supports Yosemite. Install Yosemite on that drive, right? Install Yosemite on that drive. Then you have to obviously reboot, not off that new drive, but on a different drive, and you have to edit one file. There's a file in System Library Core Services. It's called platformsupport.plist. In this, it's just basically a XML. It's an XML sheet. There's 2 things you have to add. You have to add the supported boards ID, which I have listed here. Mac, whatever this is, Mac F2289CB or C8. And then down below, there's supported model properties. You just got to add this Xserve 2.1. You add those 2 lines to the plist file, you save it out, take that drive out of the case, plug it into your server, and boot up, and you're good to go. And you got Yosemite running. The only thing you have to worry about is turn off auto updates, because if there's an auto update, it may rewrite over that file. But if it does, you can just boot up with we'll talk about that a little bit later. You just have to boot up with a lower operating system, say Lion or Snow Leopard or Lion, and then change the file again, and then you're good to go again. That's Yosemite. El Capitan is a little bit simpler, but also harder in different ways. You only have the supported model properties to update in the same file, the same System Library Core Services platformsupport.plist. But Apple has instituted some new security thing that doesn't allow you to change any of the files, right? So you still have to go through the same process. Basically, once this operating system is installed, go into this file, boot up with a different flavor of the operating system, go into this file, make the changes, save it out, and then you can reboot into El Capitan, and it should work. But you have the same issues for any updates or point updates. It may or may not update this file. If it does, then you got to do it again. But you can turn off automatic updates and do the updates when you're ready. So that's the first way, is taking the drive out, put it into an external case, and then installing the operating system directly and then editing the file. The second way to do it is you can turn any Apple device, not Apple device, but any Apple OS X system into what they call target disk mode. Then the drives on the server are just storage that you can connect to over FireWire. So you have to have a second Apple device with FireWire, connect to it, and then you can install the operating system that way, right, without having to take the drives out. The third way is to clone the drive. This is by far the easiest way. They don't recommend it for certain, like say for Flash, but I've done it and it's working fine. And that is, have the operating system on a disk or on a partition, clone it to a new drive, and then hopefully you've already edited it in advance, this file, clone it, and then you should be fine. So I've done all three of these, and they all three work. But these are the three ways you can do it. So how to work with this? Okay, the server is kind of loud, and I have videos online on youtube.com/netscalertrainer. It's my channel, one word, Netscaler Trainer. I've got a whole series on this. In fact, if you go onto YouTube and you just Google Xserve to MacPro, you'll find the playlist. And you can hear it. It is kind of loud. Once it boots up and sort of in steady state, it just it's not that bad. It's not that bad, and you can actually do things to make it quieter. But how to work with it? So I've worked with it directly. It's sitting right next to me. It's a little bit loud, but put on some headphones, noise cancellation, and you're good to go. Or put on some music, and you can work fine with it. It has with my video card, I have 2 DVI outputs, so I could drive at least 2 monitors with it. Or you could run remotely. This is yesterday. I was doing some video editing, and actually I have an iMac, which I got on Allegra for 800 zlotys, 2009 iMac. Couldn't believe it. Someone was giving it away. I had to buy it. So it doesn't have full HD. It's 20-inch. But I can connect using screen sharing, and this is what you see here. This is it's showing both screens from the server, right? That's doing the normal screen sharing. Then if you scale it, you can sort of zoom into the one screen, which is what I was doing when I was editing. So I was editing remotely, and that means that you could basically, you don't need to have KVM. KVM is all handled by the screen sharing. So you could put the server in another room or in a rack or in your garage or whatever, and then remotely control it and not have to deal with the noise. And you'll get free heat for your garage. So it's pretty, I mean, the thing is, it's phenomenal in terms of the performance. You can see that we saw earlier in the cost comparisons, the i7 is what, 3-4 times more expensive, but it's basically neck and neck. The newer iMac, it's roughly 1.5 times better performance, but it's 5 to 6 times more expensive, right? So you're not getting the fastest device, but you're getting the really good device for really low cost. So this is how you can work with it. I just love it. Just love it. It's working fine. So here's some issues that you have to think about. Most of these are pretty minor. One of them is that when you're running the newer operating systems that are not officially supported, if the system goes to sleep, it won't wake up. Okay, so you just got to turn off sleep in System Properties. There's an Energy Saver tab. You just get in there and just tell it never to go to sleep. It's real simple, and then that saves out. Get Carbon Copy. Carbon Copy by I guess bombitch.com. IBMers get I think a 20% discount if you use your IBM email address if you need it. But it's excellent. It makes an identical clone of whatever drive or partition you want to clone. And this is what I use, and it's working fantastic. If you're going to use any kind of flash devices, which I'm using a third-party flash, you need to get a trim support, something like Chameleon SSD Optimizer. Basically, it helps control how the flash is written to, right? So you don't want to overwrite the same sectors. You want to, I don't know, write linearly to the flash so that it gets even use, and that's what this trim does. So it basically forces Apple supportive trim onto a third-party device. So just something to think about. Not a big deal. If you're an Apple user, you probably already know this. If you hold down alternate or the option key when you boot up, you can select what drive to boot from. So this may be important if, for whatever reason, the drive that you want to boot from is not booting, right? Just remember that, just a simple thing. Boot from the flash, it will boot from the flash. And I mean, it boots up the server in like 25 seconds. It's awesome. It's really awesome. If you do decide to go this route, and one eBay seller did not tell me that it had a RAID controller in it. Okay, so this 2008 server came in basically 2 flavors on the dual quad-core 2.8 gigahertz processor setup. One with RAID controller built in, one without. I have one of each. The RAID controller has one issue, and that is there's a battery backup for the RAID configuration. Not a big deal, as long as you don't turn off the server. If you're running a RAID, if you're running a RAID configuration, that is. So if you're running a hardware RAID configuration and the battery is dead, and you kill the power, you lose the RAID configuration. I haven't tested this, but this is what I'm told. I've never used the RAID controller for that. But there's software RAID. Apple still has software RAID that you can set up and just bypass using the hardware RAID. Have a copy of Lion on hand just in case. And I have one of those 80 gig hard drives. I just have Lion on it. So if there's any issues, I can just boot up with Lion and then make the changes, make the fixes. So that's good to know. Also, one thing that's really cool about this, when you run Lion, the older operating systems that are supported, this server has these LED utilization lights on the front. They're blue lights. And as the usage of the CPU goes up, the lights light up, and it looks really cool. But for some reason, they're no longer supported in the new version. So if you're looking for the colorful lights to dance as the CPUs are being utilized, it's gone. So that's just one small thing. And if you were thinking about, hey, maybe I'll dual boot this using Boot Camp. Boot Camp is an Apple utility that allows you to dual boot Windows natively on the hardware. This server does not support Boot Camp. So what you got to use is Fusion, VMware Fusion. That's what I use. I think it's great. VMware Fusion allows you to run, a Windows operating system on top of OS X in a virtual machine, and you got 8 cores. In my case, 32 gigs of RAM. It's not an issue. I run games on it even, and it's working fine. A little bit of a lag, but it's okay. So those are some issues. Any questions?
Is it loud?
When it's like a jet airplane when it fires up. It's not that loud. I've had some Intel servers that were freaking loud. This it's a 1U server, and it starts out a little bit loud, but then actually if after about a minute, it calms down and it just I'm not saying it's quiet. You can hear it, but it's not like irritating. It's not that irritating. It's kind of a little bit loud. But like I said, in my case, I got it under the desk. And it's manageable. I usually put on some headphones. Noise cancellation doesn't actually help, but play some music through it, and it's fine.
Is it legal, like the operating system license?
Yeah, the operating system basically says that you can only use it on Apple hardware. That's what I'm saying. This is not a Hackintosh. This is on Apple hardware. It's just that it's not supported, right? If you try to natively, let's say you get either a flash key, or even if you had a DVD of the latest OS. It's no longer distributed on DVD, but let's say you put it on DVD, popped it in there, tried to boot it up, it would say this device does not support this operating system. Something like that. Or the hardware is not compatible with this operating system. You'll get some kind of message like that. That's why you got to do go the other route to install it. But it is Apple hardware, and you're not, in my opinion, look, I'm not a lawyer. I only play one on TV, so this is not meant to be legal advice, but as far as I understand, the Apple end user licensing agreement for the OS X says you have a license to use this only on Apple hardware. This is Apple hardware. So that's really good. Sorry?
If you compare it to Hackintosh, what works better?
It's a lot cheaper. It's a lot cheaper. I built a Hackintosh, i7 Hackintosh, 16 gigs of RAM. It cost me $1,200, and it's 2-3 years old now. But it was at the time it was top of the line. The only thing I needed to buy extra was a Wi-Fi dongle. That's why I bought that first Wi-Fi dongle. I still had it. So, does it make sense? This is basically the same power. I paid less than $500 for it. It's in a little bit different form factor, but it depends on what you want. I mean, you can certainly run a Hackintosh on some cheaper hardware, but you're not going to spend less than $500 on a good laptop, right? If you want to have a good laptop with at least an i5 or maybe i7. It's going to be at least $500. So that's what you got.
Doesn't require additional cooling?
No, not at all. I mean, it has fans built in. It's a 1U server. It has a couple of rows of fans. It definitely has fans on the power supply itself, and then it has a row of these proprietary fans sort of in the midsection, which sucks air in and blows it past the CPUs and the memory. And it's good to go. It's great for the wintertime. Warms up my office. So. I mean, okay, it does produce a bit of heat, but when you've got 8 cores cranking, and these are Xeon cores, right? So
Okay, you said that it runs on Apple hardware, but it's not exactly the same as MacBook Pro hardware, right? So, or Mac Pro. Have you seen any crashes on that?
No crashes. No crashes. Yeah, everything, I mean, like, for instance, one thing that appealed to me, I said, wow, you got 8 cores, right? So can I get 8 cores of usage, let's say if I'm doing Handbrake, right? Or if I'm running Final Cut Pro, I don't know. And definitely it was using, according to the monitoring software that's built in, it was using like 7 cores, right? 7.8, it would say, actually it goes by 100, so like 780, and then it had like 20 left over in reserve, and like 20 was idle, and like 2 was used by the operating system. And but it was massively, cranking out the utilization, right? Demanding that much of it, I don't know. But with Handbrake will definitely use all 8 cores, right? Handbrake will go through there and just compress that thing, do its thing, and really utilize it. So it's definitely, I mean, definitely feel a big difference. Doing video editing and like exporting the video, especially, takes the most time. I told you I have this 2009 iMac, right? It's got 4 gigs of RAM. It's not really comparable, but it's a Intel Core 2 Duo running at 2.66. I mean, exporting the video takes a long time. There's no flash. 320 gigabyte hard drive, and that's why the other day I was actually, let me do remote control to the server and edit it there, and let's see how it goes. And editing it that way was so much smoother, even through screen sharing. I mean, it's on the same gigabit LAN, right? No problem, but it was so much smoother, and exporting was so much faster because you got so much more power, right? To do that. So, Matt. So in a way, using a cheaper iMac as sort of the screen or the front end to it is working great. I mean, this is probably the best use case for it, right? Have that server, and my plan is to put it into a rack. I have a rack in my garage. That's where all my IT stuff is supposed to go. Right now it's in my office upstairs, but my plan is to move that into the garage, right? And then that'll be there, and I can actually have a remote control power thing, with power over IP. So I can go over IP to a website and turn on service if I need to, and then remotely control them. It's really, that's my thing.
What is the longest uptime?
I'm sorry?
The longest uptime that you have for the server?
I mean, I've had it for a year. I'm not running it nonstop. I just use it when I need it.
Oh.
But I mean, it's good to go. I mean, it's server, it's server grade hardware, right? So it's meant to be on all the time. I don't use it all the time, but just whenever I need it, I just turn it on, fire it up. I normally will connect to it directly and use it, and have had no problems with it. Really, it's really been just impressive. It's really kind of sad that Apple discontinued support for it. The only thing missing for this to support the modern OSs is just a 64-bit driver for that built-in video card.
Can you not use the old driver with the new operating system?
It's these Connects with a K. Well, I don't know what. There's some people have talked about hacking it, but it's just too much work. It's just cheaper, easier just to get a buy video card, like I did. You lose a slot, but it's what you got to do. It's a lot easier. I mean, look, if you wanted to use the older operating system that is supported, let's say 10.6, if that was okay for you certainly could use 10.6 and possibly use older apps that are supported under 10.6, right? I think the newer Final Cut Pro and Compressor and those kind of things require the latest operating system, or at least 10.10 Yosemite. So that may be the only restriction that you have. But if you're okay with running older software, you can certainly use the older operating system and be fine, and use that same video, the older video card that is accelerated. If there's no other questions, I want to thank you for coming. There's my channel on YouTube. It's called NetScaler Trainer, because I started out doing training for NetScaler, the Citrix NetScaler, and other things. But you can find other videos. I think I have 7 or 8 videos on this project, and I actually step you through some of the process of how I did it, and go into a little more detail how to install the operating system. Also look at running software RAID, and talk about the flash cards that I'm using, pros and cons, and all that kind of stuff. So there's some more information there, and you get more details. If you have any more questions, just feel free to contact me or send me a message. All right. Thanks you guys for coming. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.